Today we're talking about the next type of conic section. So here is all of the conic sections. We've done circle, check. Today we're on to the ellipse. So the ellipse is formed when we come in kind of at an angle here and we intersect one of these cones, either the top or the bottom cone. And the shape that we get is called an ellipse. The way the ellipse is formed is we have these 2 points here called foci. And any point on this ellipse, any point at all, if I add this distance plus that distance, it's always going to be the same. It's always going to be a constant. So that's how the ellipse is formed. It's really not as important to understand how it's formed as it is to be able to graph it. When we're graphing it, our center is HK, just like it is for a circle, HK. But now we're going to have numbers down here in the denominator. And this is going to tell us how far to go in the x direction. This is going to tell us how far to go in the y direction. It always has to be equal to 1. Every ellipse must be equal to 1. Okay, we're going to have something called a major axis that's going to have the major vertices. The foci are also going to be here. We're going to have the minor axis. This is going to contain those smaller vertices that are shorter distance from the center, and it's going to have a length of 2b. But we'll talk about that later. Here's an important part. The foci is always c units from the center. It's always on the major axis, and we have to use this formula. Why would this formula be confusing? Yeah, but it's not quite, is it? It's a squared minus b squared equals c squared. So you got to keep that in mind for ellipses. Okay, so we're going to start off by graphing one. What did we say it always has to equal right here? 1. So I'm going to divide by 9 everywhere. And then I have to simplify. So I'm going to have x squared over 9 plus y squared over 1 equals 1. I'm going to come over here to my axes. So my center is HK. What's the center going to be then? Is there any shift left or right? 0, 0. So there's going to be our center, and it's a little different than a circle. This is not going to be the radius, it's an ellipse. This number right here tells us how far to go out in the x direction. So what's the square root of 9? 3. So we're going to go out 3 units in the x direction. 3 to the right and 3 to the left. Those points are going to be called the major vertices. So my first major vertex is at 3, 0. The other one's at negative 3, 0. I now look at what's underneath the y, and I take the square root of that. That's 1. So I'm going to go up 1 and down 1. And now with those points, I'm going to create the ellipse. Okay, and so there's the way the ellipse looks. Let's go ahead and jot down our minor axis vertices. This would be the minor axis because it's smaller. Major, larger, minor, smaller. So my minor vertices are at 0, 1 and 0, negative 1. The last thing we have to find are the foci. To find the foci, we have to do a squared minus b squared equals c squared. Well, a squared is always going to be the larger of these two numbers. So a squared is going to be 9. So 9 minus 1 equals c squared. So 8 equals c squared. Take the square root. That's 2 radical 2 for c. So which way is this longer, in the x direction or y direction? X. So I'm going to go out 2 radical 2, or radical 8, which is about 3, a little less than 3. Right there's one of my foci, and there's the other foci. We would actually call them focus. That's one focus, that's the other focus. So my foci, that's plural, is going to be at 2 radical 2, 0, and negative 2 radical 2, 0. And that's how we graph an ellipse and find all the information. Okay, so now we're going to go on to number 2. Letter B, rather. First of all, is it equal to 1? Yep, we're good with that. What's the center going to be?
-3.
Good. So let's go ahead and plot that. I'm going to go up a little higher for my axis, just so I can fit this in. Over 1, down 3. Okay. Now, where's going to be my major axis? Is it going to go in the x direction or the y direction for the major vertices? Y direction. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and find the major vertices first. So I have to go in the y direction on those. How far up and down are we going to go? 6. So we go up 6 and down 6. To go into that other graph, but that's okay. So those are going to be then, now look guys, to find those, my x didn't change, but my y, I went up 6, so -3 plus 6. Again, my x didn't change, and then I had to go down 6 from my center, so -3 minus 6. There would be my major vertices. Okay, now I'm going to find my minor ones. How far are we going to go out? 5 in which direction? Whatever it's under, x. So I'm going to go in the x direction, so right 5 and left 5. And I can now draw my ellipse. This one's close to being a circle, isn't it? Okay, so my minor vertices are going to be at, take this number, add 5 to it, my y didn't change, take that number, subtract 5 from it, and keep the y the same. Now, where are the foci going to go if they have to be on that longer axis? Are they going to go in the x or y direction? Y. And I have to do a squared minus b squared. That's going to be 11. Square root of 11, that's about 3.3 or something. So I'm going to go in the y direction, up about 3.3, down about 3.3. Those are going to be my foci. And the names of those, now watch this, you might not understand this at first, but it's not that bad. The foci, from this center, when I went to this point, my x did not change. For my y, I went up radical 11. For this foci, the x didn't change, but from the y, I went down radical 11. Does that make sense to everyone? Okay, getting a little more difficult. This is like what we did with circles. What did we have to do with circles? We had to complete the square, actually. So we're going to get our x terms together. I'm going to leave a little space there. Get my y terms together. And the constant goes over to the other side. Before you're allowed to complete the square, the coefficient in front of x squared and y squared must be 1. So just for this little group here, I'm going to have to factor out a 16. And I'm left with x squared plus 6x. Out of these two, I'm going to have to factor out a 4. And I'm left with y squared minus 2y. Once I've done that factoring to get those coefficients to be 1, now I can go ahead and complete the square. So I look at this number, we take half of it and square it. So what's that? We're going to add 9. But I really didn't add 9 here. I added 16 times 9. So I can't just add 9 to this side. That's a mistake everyone makes. What do I have to add instead? Right, so I'm going to have to say plus 144. What about here? I have to take half of this and square it. What's that going to be? 1. Do I put plus 1 here? Plus 4. Good. All right, so now I'm going to have 16 times x plus 3 squared plus 4 times y minus 1 squared equals 148 minus 84 is 64. So how do we get it into the correct form? What did I say that has to be? 1. So I'm going to have to divide this by 64, this by 64, and this by 64. So I want to know what's 16 into 64, or what's 64 divided by 16. So this is going to be then x plus 3 squared over 4 plus y minus 1 squared over 16 equals 1. Does that make sense? All right, just real quick then, what's the center? -3, 1. Okay, what about the major vertices? How far would we go out? Well, for major though, 4 in the x direction. So watch, add 4, y stays the same. Subtract 4, y stays the same. Can you do it without graphing? It's a little harder, but you can do it. Okay, now the minor vertices. What are we going to do on that? Go what? 2. So I'm going to add 2 to my x, y stays the same. Subtract 2, y stays the same. We won't bother with the foci on that, or graphing. Anybody need help? All right, last one, flip over. Okay, look at this one, how weird it is. There's no change in the center. I can see the center is still just 0, 0. But the problem here is that it is equal to 1, that's good, but these are supposed to be coefficients of 1. In this special case, let me show you what to do. I'm not sure you would think of this. This is over 1, and this is over 1. But I'm not allowed to have a coefficient in front of x squared. So what I have to do is, within this term, I have to divide the top by 4 to get it to be 1. If I divide the top by 4, I have to divide the bottom by 4. What about within this little term, what am I going to have to do? Divide the top and bottom by 9. So here's what my equation becomes. X squared over 1/4 plus y squared over 1/9 equals 1. All right, so we have our center at 0, 0 again. How far am I going to go out in the x direction? 1/2, right. So how far are we going to go out in the y direction? Which is more, 1/2 or 1/3? 1/2. So my major vertices, I'm going to have to go out 1/2, 0, -1/2, 0. My minor vertices, I'm going to have to go up and down 1/3. I'm not even going to graph. We're just going to do this without graphing. So we've got our major vertices, our minor vertices. The last thing I have to do, I'm going to find the foci this time. A squared minus b squared equals c squared. Well, a squared has to be the larger of those two. What's that going to be? A squared, though. A is 1/2, so what's a squared? Right, so I have to do 1/4 minus what? 1/9 equals c squared. How would you guys solve that? Common denominator. You can actually multiply through by that common denominator. If I multiply through by it, I'm going to get 1/4 of 36 is 9, 1/9 of 36 is 4, and so 5 equals c squared. And so c then is going to be the square root of 5. Oh crap, sorry. Oh, that's great for my video. Okay, so I'm going to have 36. I forgot to do the 36 in front of my c squared. So I'm going to have 5 equals 36 c squared. You guys with me on that now?
Yeah.
Divide by 36. And so C is going to be the square root of 5, and then the square root of 36 is just 6. So that's my C value. So because this was major, that's going to be where my foci are going to go. It's going to be radical 5 over 6, 0, and negative radical 5 over 6, 0. Okay? Other ways to do that, though, guys, you certainly could have just done that on the calculator. Just look real quick. You could have done this. You could have just done 1/4 minus 1/9. Get that answer, math frac, and it gives you that 5 over 36 that we worked so hard to get. So. Okay. Any questions? You guys will have a worksheet to do over this.